All right. So first thing I want to get out of the way is the issue of schedules. So if we look at our project map right here, and just again to kind of keep this full circle here, the back to basics agenda or syllabus here, the navigator has the four sections: the project map, the view map, the layout book, and the publisher. Right here, where the project map, that's the point of origin for everything that exists in ArchiCAD. So we'll collapse that down and take a look at the schedules here. There are three types of schedules. The only type of schedule that you're really going to need to utilize in ArchiCAD are the element schedules. The component schedules, those are going to be specific to sort of sub-elements. So that's where you're talking about curtain wall panels, guardrail, newels or panels. Different subcomponents of elements would be in the component schedules. But the element schedule, this is scheduling elements that are modeled in ArchiCAD. So if we're talking about, let's say, door schedules in particular, let's see here. I'm not as familiar with this project, but it looks like there's exterior and interior door hardware. Why am I not, oh, this door legend. Let's pull this one up and see what's going on here. So the way that schedules work is that they work based on a criteria set. It's an if-then statement kind of way of thinking about it. So if it meets this criteria, then this is the information from the scheduled elements that's going to show. So each one of these columns is basically a field here in the bottom half. And this is what filters out whether things show up or not. I would say that this is probably a little bit more complicated than most schedules need to be for a criteria set. It is critical to keep in mind that the and or statements can kind of confuse the schedule a little bit. Sometimes you can actually add these brackets. So if I wanted to say the door is exterior, I might actually want to add brackets here and here in order to say that this is all one. It's a door and it's exterior, or all of this other stuff is met. If I do that, then it should reduce that down even further. So that's, I mean, that at its simplest form, that's basically the schedules and how they work. If you see something isn't scheduling, it's because it doesn't meet this criteria. Does that make sense?
Are the people who wanted the answer to this question on this call?
Yes.
Okay.
Was there anything more specific than that you wanted to cover? I know one of the big questions that comes up is why aren't my zones showing up in the schedule? I don't know if that's something that you've been experiencing.
We had issues where the zones were kind of messing up which rooms were assigned to each door. So, for example, if there was a door that was swinging from a hall into a bedroom,
Yep.
it was showing that the room that the door was in was the hall versus the bedroom it was swinging into. And
Yes.
so, adjusting the zones, we had to change the parameter of or the perimeter of the zone where it didn't match the room even a little bit to try to exaggerate it so that it lined up correctly. So I wondered if there was a better way of doing that.
So there is, it's based on when you first place the door or window. So if you notice, like here on my
Okay.
cursor, when I'm about to place this door into this wall, I get the little sun icon, right? That's so all doors and windows, they have an interior and an exterior setting. And that's for like interior surface, interior trim profiles, interior whatever, jam extensions versus exterior trim profiles, surfaces, etc. Um, Unfortunately, there's nothing that indicates which side is interior versus exterior after you've placed it. So it is a bit of a guess and check thing. But like, let's say I placed it this way, and it doesn't matter which way it swings, right? If I place it swinging this way, that just means that it's an outswing door versus an inswing door.
Mhm.
But the top side, the north side of that wall is the exterior of that door. Now doors are always going to schedule to their exteriors. So it might be that for a door between two rooms, maybe this door, if it needs to be in the sunroom, needed to be started here and then swung the other way. Regardless, I can put it this way, right? So the exterior of this would be, let's say that this zone right here said room one. And this zone right here said room two. This is going to schedule to room one because
Mhm.
the exterior of that door is on the north side of that wall. But there's nothing I can do to see which side is which on that. So what I have to do, if I see that it's going to room two, my go-to solution is to hit flip on the door settings here. That's going to inverse which side is exterior versus interior. So go ahead and say flip and then OK. And sometimes that will, hold on, let me. So flip, that'll usually flip which side the door's swinging to. Now, if I hit rotate, it'll rotate it back around the other way. But
And
it
when you rotate it, does it change
no.
what's the inside and outside? Okay, just
Nope.
change the swing.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, flip is going to invert the interior to exterior face of the door.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, other things just to kind of give you the full crash course on this. If you do see that zones are not scheduling to the doors or windows, the most common reason for that is that the zone is not abutting the face of the wall. Other reasons are that the door, the wall, and the zone usually have to be on the same renovation filter. Oftentimes it's because the zone layer is not visible. So if I didn't see any of my zones popping up at all in here, it's because the zone layer is off for that layer combination. So you have to turn the zone layer on for the zones to show up in the door and window schedule. Other things that can happen are if the wall is, say, a balloon framed wall, you have a clerestory or something. If parts of it live on another story, it cannot associate to zones that are on the other story. So you might have to have zones on multiple stories, even if it's all one big clerestory space. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
The reaction we're getting in this room really points out that we should start with the basic crash course.
Yep. No, that's the goal, is like that's going to be starting point A. We only started at schedules because that question came up. So yeah, I guess if anybody wants to hang out and listen, you know, it never hurts to even go kind of back to basics if you feel like you know more. You know, you can always learn something from anybody. So I don't think it's going to be too basic for anybody to sit in on. If you feel like it is too basic, no hard feelings if you got to bail. So.
Yeah, feel free to do so.
And if you want to schedule like one-on-one breakout sessions for more detailed stuff like that schedule, troubleshooting, or anything like that, just send me a Slack and we'll put something on the calendar.
I think we should just assume that some of that's going to have to happen. I mean, one of the things that our list of topics really pointed out to me is that I think we are still underutilizing your time. I think we could schedule more of it with you one-on-one. And so if we get stuck on anything that feels like it could use a deeper dive, we can always go there.
Sure. All right, so let's go back to the roots, the brass tacks, the origins. Let's just like, so you open up a file, whatever that file is, right? So it could be just opening up ArchiCAD. You get the splash screen to open join. Everything should be on Teamwork. We shouldn't really be going file new for anything. We should be opening and joining Teamwork projects. So open, join Teamwork projects. I don't have access to a whole lot on your server right now. So I just opened one of the files that I did have access to.
I want it. There's barely anything there.
Okay.
Or try a new one if you want.
I think that this is fine. We could start. I'm not going to make any changes to this project, so I think I'm just going to work off to the side, use this. It's going to have a lot of like the familiar attributes and stuff to other projects in the office, which is why I don't want to like be creating any inventing any wheels here. So, all right. So looking at, we'll just go kind of down the tool list here, how we place tools, how we edit tools, and manipulate these tools, what they mean. So the most basic, if you're starting from the ground up on a project, looking at the wall tool, that's going to be the primary tool for laying out spaces. There are probably, I mean, 100 different ways to do a schematic model in ArchiCAD. In my mind, the most effective way is to start laying out spaces with actual walls, because those are going to be ultimately the tool that's going to define your rooms and your spaces, your volumes anyway. So even if it's not exactly what that wall is going to be, we're not worried about that. I'm just going to take any wall. The thing that I do want to pay attention to is this reference line. That reference line is the origin for that wall. The wall is an extrusion based on that vector. So if there's any sort of foresight into what the construction methods are, what the design intent is. Thinking about things like a remodel project where maybe we know the face of finish of the project, finishes are going to remain or they're going to get removed. Things like that, we might want that reference line to be to the core. We might want it to be the outside face. It really depends on how much detail we need in the project and what we're designing to. Most projects I've worked on for light wood frame construction, we're designing at least the vertical shell to the outside of core of all elements. As far as what the geometry of that wall is, that can change over time. So as an example, if I draw in, let's say I know that my overall building is going to be 40 by something random like 20, 22, whatever. And I'm just going to draw these walls in here, right? So I have this composite right here. That reference line sits right there. That's the outside of core of that wall. If that wall changes, if it becomes, so that's a 3.5 steel rigid something wall. If it becomes something else like this wall with stone, notice that wall changes thickness, but that reference line stays where it's at. I think what's going on here is we have overrides showing different settings. We might get into that later, but
Do
basically,
we also have just like basic SD assemblies?
I am not as familiar with your template as I probably should be. It does look like we've got SD 2x4 and SD
Yeah, there you
2x6.
go.
So any drop-down list you see in ArchiCAD now has these search functions. So it's a lot less overwhelming to find what you're looking for. As long as you can like type in a couple of key letters or something, it's going to reduce that down. Even if you just know you need a 2x6 wall, this is everything in your project that's been called 2x6. So we've got a 2x6 wall, 2x6 ceiling.
Yeah.
Right? So that might be good enough to start modeling from. Okay.
Yeah.
While we're sort of just kind of free flowing through this, another tip is if you want to change one wall to match another, if you hold down, I'm on Mac, so I'm going to give you the Mac shortcut. If you want the PC equivalent, I might be able to get a spreadsheet put together of Mac equivalents. But if I hold down the Option key on Mac, my cursor changes to this eyedrop command. If I eyedrop this wall and then hold Command Option, so Option is eyedrop, Command Option is inject, I can inject the settings of that wall into every other wall in the project. And notice when I did that, it shifted the position of the wall because that blue reference line is on the outside face of core. So the core changed dimensions, but that blue line stays constant. Okay. So if we carry that around all the way here. So that's the wall tool. In a nutshell, there are other settings here. It can tie to the floor height. There's also settings for how this wall might show up on various floor plans. So you could say it shows on its home story only. You could say that it shows projected with overhead. An example of this might be, let's say that I had a stair opening here. And that stair opening was only going to be a 3-foot high wall. So I'm going to say not linked, and we'll make that wall 3 feet high. I don't want that wall to show cut through. But I do want it to show, so I can switch that to outlines only. Or if I had a partition wall that was only partial height, maybe it's 4 or 5 feet and it's not being cut through, but I want it to force to be cut through, I could say cut only. Oh, sorry. It can't say all relevant stories and cut only. We can say home story only. And symbolic cut is the setting there. So even though this wall is still only 3 feet tall, I can say that this one's cut through and shows cut, whereas these ones are same height, but they show as outlines only. Other situations where this might matter would be like for roof plans where maybe you've got like dormer walls or parapet walls or things like that of different heights. You can have a lot of graphic control over how those show in plan, regardless of what their actual geometry is in the model. Okay. Next tool in the toolbox is the slab tool. And I'm going to get into a lot of the edit functions here as well, because I think that those are also critical to getting started in a model. But I do want to get through the basic tools, the walls, slabs, beams, columns, and roofs, just to give you the groundwork for basic schematic modeling. The slab tool, is any horizontal plane. So whereas the wall tool is extrusions along a vector, the slab tool is an extrusion along a plane. That slab tool can be a basic extrusion, or it can have a composite just like the walls. So if we said that, what do we have for SD? SD floor 2x12 might be a good place to start. The slab tools, its reference plane can be the top of the slab, bottom of slab, top of core, bottom of core. So if this were, I don't know, like a soffit or something like that, and I needed that soffit to be 9'1" clear to my floor, I might put that editing plane at the bottom of that soffit. If it's a finish floor, I might put that at the top of the finish floor so that I know when this is 0 to home story, that's exactly where it sits. So I'm kind of designing to the floor to floor height. So where the walls are typically designed to face of stud, in my mind, sort of industry norms, most high-end residential projects I've done are designed floor to floor, face of finish, because we're typically running flush from all finishes on the floor. If you are designing to subfloor, then you would say that your reference plane is to the top of core. So it really depends, I guess, on the project needs on where that sits. Just bear in mind that when that composite changes, right, because it's very unlikely for the life of the project that's going to be a 2x12 floor framing. It's going to change from that reference plane up and or down. So if your floor finish thickness changes and your reference plane is at the top of the slab, the whole slab shifts down based on finished floor thicknesses. So you have to design sort of anticipating some of those sort of future developments in the design. So here I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Over here in the info box, your info box might be across the top, but it should look very similar, whether it's horizontally orientated or vertical. You'll see layers and then geometry method. Geometry method is just how we're going to draw this out. So in the walls, for example, just to backtrack, there's various options where you could say, if I had the same shape and I wanted to draw it out really quickly, I could say X 22, Y 45, and draw it out with just a couple of clicks. There's also the ability to draw multiple segments. So you can draw various segments in here. If you get a segment that's off a little bit, if you hit escape, it's going to cancel the whole placement. If you hit delete, it's going to undo the last place node. So I can delete back to the origin and then start redrawing it again. Same works with the slab. So if the slab has a geometry like this, where I want to snap to here, and maybe I miss snap here. If I hit delete, then I can go back and snap to that point again. Okay, so now I have a slab that's fitting around that building. You could
Why
also.
did you like when you created that slab? This is kind of like a dumb question, but it's basic. Like, why, when you're selecting the points for that slab, would you select the outside face of the wall as opposed to the inside face of the wall? Does it just know?
So I'm clicking on that junction right there. And yeah, realistically, I would probably, if this were a project that I was actually working on, I would probably zoom in and go, I'm going to snap to right here.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, in my experience, like if you're close to that corner, it's going to find the reference line, or it's going to prefer the reference line. Like just like even if I zoom way out, like there's no way I can know where I'm clicking right there, right? I know I could see I'm on the outside corner, but there's no way I know if I'm on the face of finish or face of core. But
Right.
it tries to prefer the reference line if it's close to another node.
Okay.
So good housekeeping is zoom in.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of zoom in, zoom out in ArchiCAD.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The other thing you can do, if I know that I have a continuous polygon that I'm trying to trace, if I grab my slab tool and zoom in, I can hold down my space bar. If it'll let me here. And I think you have to be able to see multiple edges of that vector. But if I hold down the space bar there and click, it's going to trace that vector that I clicked on for wherever it's continuous. So that's actually really useful. If, for example, let's say you get a site survey or something, and they've got some wandering driveway path thing, and you want to model that with a mesh or a slab or something like that. I'm just going to close it here with something. You can hold space and click on that and get any shape. Trying to get that shape with like tangents based on a polygon slab, you can do it, right? I can take tangents and try to guess at that and get close, but the spline tool is way better at that because it's always going to find the smooth tangents. So again, using the right tool for each job is kind of an important step. Okay. Excuse me. All right, let's take a look at, I'm going to put a little porch off to the side here as well. Just, I know that this is nothing that we're ever going to be using, but just as a practical kind of application here. So let's take a look at the column tool. The column tool is a vertical vector, and it's an extrusion based on that vertical vector. So looking at the column, has a little bit different user interface. They rebuilt the column and the beam tool, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, and they've never brought the rest of the tool's user interface up to this user interface. Once you understand what's going on here, it's a little bit more user-friendly, actually, even because the floor plan display options, for example, are all kind of grouped together. You don't have to go hunting for them. But first we have the column settings, and that's just length and width. So if we have, I don't know, like a 6x6 column, for example, that column can be vertical or it can be canted. It cannot be horizontal. The biggest difference between the column and the beam tool is that columns cannot be horizontal, beams cannot be vertical. There's a few other small additions. For example, the way that columns interact with walls. There is an option for that column interacting with the walls. There's no option for the beams to interact with the walls other than by building material. We have a reference axis for that column here, for example. So it might be like if I'm looking at a corner post on this porch right here, I might want that origin point to be right here. And if we look at that, so if I snap that to right there, you can see that that sits right there. Let's just, as an example, say that this needs to be 10 by 10 now. Right? Because I put that origin point on the corner of that slab, when it grows or shrinks, it grows and shrinks from that corner. It takes a little bit of extra time to define that and place it, but it means that when the design changes, I know that that's all going to get updated with the design. So kind of I refer to as like future-proofing your design, taking these little steps to sort of get ahead of the curve because you know that the design is going to change. You want to be kind of fluid with your ideas. So adjusting those settings as you go is going to be a lot more efficient. I was going to kind of group all of the editing functions together, but as long as we're here. So let's take a look at dumping a column on the other side of this here. So if I select that column and hit Command Option M, that's to mirror a copy. And I'll go through all the editing functions here as a group in a bit. I can mirror off the center point of that and get a column to the other edge. And again, because I mirrored, that means that the origin point was here on that one. It's going to be here on that one. So if I change these back to 6x6, and let's go ahead and just group those together, they both shrink outward from there.
For PCs, is Command Option translated to Control Alt?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, I believe so. It's the drag function on Mac is Command D, and I think it's Control D on PC. Command Option D, or maybe it might be. So if you go to Edit and Move, you're going to see the shortcuts listed right there. It might be Control Shift, I think.
I'm pretty sure it's Control Shift D for copying, like making multiple copies. But when you want to like copy and then inject parameters, it's Alt C and then Control Alt C.
Okay.
So
but
Alt
the
C
good
and
news is
Control.
you can kind of hover over the tool and it'll tell you.
So Alt C and Control Alt C is if you want to lock to the inject. That is a toolbar tool up here as well. But just as a temporary switch to the cursor type, it is Control. If you hold down Control, I believe it gives you the eyedrop, and Control Alt, I believe, gives you the inject.
Control gives you cut.
Oh.
Alt gives you eyedropper.
Okay. Like I said, I know that there's a matrix out there of the various like keyboard shortcut translations, common keyboard shortcut translations from Mac to PC. I don't know that that's helpful given that we're not going to remember the Mac shortcuts I've mentioned anyway. So
yeah, I think probably for me and just learning is finding, if you could help us by pointing out where the toolbar is instead of the shortcut. It's great to know that there's shortcuts, but
Yeah.
being able to
So
navigate the menu, I think, is my first
yeah.
priority.
So all of the shortcuts that we're going to be talking about for editing the model are right here under the edit menu, and it's going to be edit move and edit reshape.
Okay, great.
And if you don't see shortcuts, I know out of the box there are no shortcuts for a lot of these. Like I'm using an more out of the box work environment than I usually do. But usually I would want to have shortcuts for things like split, fillet and chamfer, intersect, offset, not so much. There's a pet palette option for that, which hopefully we can get into here in a little bit as well. But yeah, the drag, really all of these move functions, if these can become muscle memory to you, you're going to find that just ArchiCAD becomes so much more efficient. You'll be stumbling so much less over trying to sculpt and model in ArchiCAD if whatever your shortcut for drag, rotate, mirror, and then the copies of those, the drag, rotate, mirror copies, and then the multiply command. The multiply command is great for things like if I know that I have, say, 3 columns between these 2 spaces, trying to do the math for 39 foot 1 equally. Whereas if I just go Command U or Control U or Edit, Move, and Multiply, I could say that I have 3 copies from point A to point B. Okay. Let's see. I want to take a quick look at the roof tool. Sorry. All right, so the roof tool has a couple of different options here if we look at the geometry method. The first is the single plane option, which is the more complex. And then the other is the multi-plane geometry. The multi-plane geometry works pretty well most of the time. It's one of those options that works really well until it doesn't. It does have a couple of shortcomings. If your roof is any more complicated than basic hips and valleys, the multi-plane roof really doesn't work that great. Let's put this on the roof layer. I'm just going to go ahead and draw in. Usually I would put this on a separate story, but we'll just go ahead and place this right here. And I'm just going to draw it from one corner to the next. So using the geometry method of multi-plane and using a basic rectangle, I get a basic hip roof here. Okay. Now the great thing about the multi-plane roof is if I needed deeper overhangs, I don't have to adjust those overhangs one at a time. So let's say we had 4-foot overhangs here. That adjusts all the overhangs around the whole roof. Every element, when you select it in ArchiCAD, will have a pet palette. So I select this roof, for example. If I click on this edge, this pet palette pops up. Now this is going to give me a lot of different editing options. For example, I can shift and offset this edge in. I can curve or change the geometry and shape of this roof. I can add a node to that roof. But here on the roof tool, I also have the option to change what that edge type is. So if I click on that custom plane settings here, the last option in the top row, I could say that this edge of the roof is not a pitched roof, it's a gable roof. And now I get a basic gable end roof. Do the same thing here and change this one to gable and say okay. Okay.
So to do that, you're clicking on the origin line in order to get the pet palette up.
Exactly. Now, if I do click on the edge, I also get a pet palette option, and I can shift and sculpt that roof as well using that boundary edge as well. So
it's a click, not a right click.
It is a left click. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I were going to adjust this ridge, for example, and make like a boat prow kind of design, there are options for that. This roof, it is simpler, but it can still be very sculptural. I mean, even if you had, let's say like a gambrel roof or something like that, or a pitch break, there are settings in here even where I could say that we go from a 1 in 12 to a 3 in 12 pitch, right? And then it creates, there's a guess and check aspect to this. So let's say that that's there. I'm not seeing where that's at though. It should have a pitch break option in there. There's something weird going on in this file though. But anyway, with the story settings, it's kind of weird that this stuff's all at like 900 to project 0. I'm not sure what's going on there. I'm not going to get too hung up on that right now. Yeah, so the pet palette's going to give you options for a lot of different selection types. For like adjusting walls, for example, this offset all edges can be great. You can actually offset elements out all as a group using that offset edges command. Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Let me go back a few steps. There we go. I want to take a look at the beam tool now. And I wanted the roof in here before I did the beam tool. If I take a marquee here, and I'm going to put a marquee around this area. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just take a basic beam. So the marquee tool is over here in the toolbox. It's right below the arrow tool. I'm going to take a beam around. We'll put a porch beam on this. We'll say that this is a 6 by 10. And if we put that reference line on the edge of the beam and click here, we can see that that's going to then reference around the edge of that porch. And this is all in floor plan, right? So I don't know that this is exactly where I want it to be in 3D, but we're just kind of mocking this up in floor plan. It is really important to cycle through and not get like tunnel vision stuck in one viewpoint type. Oftentimes I'll have like working sections, working elevations, saved 3D views that I can cycle through as I'm modeling, because if all I do is get a really cool looking floor plan put together, there's nothing that says that that's even remotely useful as a model until I actually pull it up in 3D. So I put the marquee around this portion of the building. If I hit F4 on PC, I believe it's F5, which is show selection marquee in 3D. That's also under view, 3D view options, or sorry, elements in 3D, and show selection, which should be F4 or F5. Zoom to extents would be command apostrophe, which is what I just did there, or it's down here at the bottom of the toolbar. There's fit in window. So here we can see I've got these various beams sitting here. Let's go ahead and pull those down. Something like that. And we'll pull the roof up to there. So if I want rafters that are sort of coming below this roof level, what I can do there is if I drop a beam, let's go to the settings of that beam. I'm going to put the rafter reference line at the top center of that beam. I'm going to go ahead and roll with the 6 by, oh, sure, we'll just mix it up a little bit here. All right, so there's my rafter. And I'm just going to click, if I zoom in here, I'm going to click on the bottom node here. And the beam can actually be drawn at an angle to begin with. So I don't have to predefine that angle. I'm just going to automatically match the angle of that roof. I don't know why that's not showing up though.
Did it go away because you didn't have it in the marquee? There you go.
Did it?
Maybe.
Well, it was clicked. The center line was clicked to the marquee. It should have been showing at least half of that beam, I would have thought. Anyway, so now I want to bird's mouth this out. So I'm just going to zoom to this side, grab the roof and the beam together, use my drag command, and I'm going to snap from that point to that point. So now that beam should be bird's mouthed out to that top plate of that rafter. The beams, like I said, they can be horizontal or at an angle. They can also be arched. I don't know that you guys, I haven't seen a lot of your work that includes like sort of a lot of ornate trim work and stuff, or any kind of arched windows or anything like that. But the beam tool can have arches to it. If you have anything with like big arcing glue lambs and stuff like that, the beam tool is great for that. They can also be curved, right? So looking at this beam, if it had a curve to it, I can bow it like this. They cannot be curved and arced though. So if I were going to try to arc it, there's no pet palette option to arc that here. There is if it's a straight beam. So if you needed something that was like slanted, curved, and arcing, that's where you have to jump into the railing tool. That's definitely not anything we're going to touch on today at all. Other things about the beams and the columns are they have a really cool feature here called segment. This is where you could say that this beam is not the same thing all the way through, right? I can see that this beam is about 20 feet long and these are the dimensions of it. But right here, there's this option where I could say it's segmented and I can add a segment. So right here, I've got highlighted, there's the lower segment, there's the upper segment. So I'm going to select the lower segment, which I know it seems backwards. The lower segment is on the top, but that has more to do with like, did I draw it counterclockwise or clockwise than anything? So it's a weird function there. But if you just click on one, you can see which one you're selecting. This lower segment, I want it to be fixed. So maybe this segment is only 3 feet long, for example. I can then say that I want that lower segment to be tapered. And I can come into the settings and again, do a little guess and check. I always guess wrong at first. Yep, guessed wrong. Right. So then I can get like a tapered rafter tail off of a single beam. Other settings with the beams and the columns, they have floor plan settings. So you have all of your pens, your attributes and stuff in here for how it appears in floor plan, whether it has a cover fill, the reference line shows or not. There's a lot of different settings here. There are, just like the walls and every other tool, there's projected with overhead. That's just, is it going to show if it's above my cutting plane? I could say cut only, at which point it's not going to show in my floor plan because I know it's too high. Outlines only is usually what I gravitate to for roofs because I don't really want to see a lot of like the extra stuff on the roof. I only need to see the boundary line of a roof on any plan. So outlines only is a great setting for that, for roofs. For beams, usually projected with overhead is kind of ideal because some beams are overhead, some beams aren't. Beams and columns are great tools, not just for beams and columns. They get used for a lot of trim work, a lot of accessories, a lot of details. And I think like starting out in ArchiCAD, if there's one thing that you can take away from today's session, it's that these tools that you're using to model with, don't get hung up on what they're called or what their names are. Try to learn what geometries you can actually create with them. Because the wall tool is not just for walls. We can use it for site elements. We can use it for pool coping. We can use it for casework and molding. We can use it to build custom furniture pieces. The wall tool can create a lot of different shapes based on vector extrusion. The roof tool gets used a lot for garage slabs. It gets used for porches and patios that might have a really small slope to it. It gets used for ceilings as well as roofs. I use it a lot for like custom shower pans even, or pool components. So the name of those tools is really inconsequential. My work environment, I actually crop that way out because I don't really even care to think about what they're called. It's mostly about what we can model with those components. Some of them it makes sense, like the roof tool is used for modeling roofs. The wall tool is used for modeling walls, but that's not exclusively the other functions. So the beam and the column tool, they also get used for modeling door and window trims, baseboards, crown moldings, box beams, all sorts of different components in ArchiCAD beyond just their namesake. So I'll go ahead and say okay here. If I get one rafter modeled in here, let's go ahead and drag that. I'm going to hold Shift to lock to this axis, and I'm going to center up here. And I'm going to use that same multiply command. So that beam is in the right spot, presumably now. If I use my multiply command, that's again under Edit, Move, and Multiply, or Command U on the Mac. And I can say that these are going to be 32 inches apart. And that will multiply those around that way. Okay. I don't know why that's not moving. There we go. Okay, any questions so far? Before I move on, there is another setting. I mentioned it, I just kind of glazed over it, and I don't know if this is useful or not, but in the column tool, there's a setting for, let me turn off the true line weight here, for how it interacts with walls. So this building material and this building material are interacting with each other. This column is cropping out that wall because of building material priorities. I think we'll have time to start talking about attributes here in a little bit. But the interaction between this beam, this column and this wall, I can actually go into the column settings and say that I want that to actually interact with the finishes of that wall. So if I say okay there, now this column is going to be wrapped by that wall finish. I don't know if that's something that you guys run into a lot, but that is a useful tool so that you're not meticulously modeling separate walls or separate columns around those interactions. It's going to automatically identify those two connections.
It'll definitely be a thing that we have to address, right? Whatever we're gonna clad a column. Um, my question for you would be, and maybe this is a separate thing, but is there something else like that that exists for wall-to-wall connections? Because we have a lot of complex wall systems, and I can show you some, where it's like it's very difficult to get things to resolve in a way where the finishes are clean, and present as clean. And I would love to not fuss around with that anymore.
Yeah, I would love that too. I know
It's like it's reference lines and it's all that nonsense, but it's like it does even then it doesn't all work out.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I wish that there was a better solution. I wish I had a better option for you other than this is something that we troubleshoot in every project. In fact, having this project open, I'm guessing if I zoom into any particular problem area of walls joining together here or not joining
I mean,
together.
some of that is existing versus new, so hard to say.
Sure, sure. And I'm not gonna go messing around with this model here. But yeah, like looking where that reference line comes here versus here versus here. So there are some tips that you can use to get these things to clean up. The first is that these reference lines need to all join together. If there's any disconnect, there's no way for those walls to know that they're supposed to interact. So let me just sketch over the model here. Oh, my calendar is reminding me to have a meeting today. 1 second here, sorry.
You have a meeting with Sarah separately from us.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I think it was just, I don't know. I don't think I did. Okay, so oh, actually, Sarah and I had for a while, we had a standing open check. Anyway.
Yeah.
So if you have a wall, and I'm just going to draw it in as a reference line here, right? Just think about it like the vector. And if that turns the corner here, the vector for the wall that comes in here needs to intersect. So even if that vector is down here, this wall right here might need to extend all the way to here. And maybe what that means is that if we actually were to look at the extrusions of those walls, right? Maybe this wall runs all the way to here, and this one comes to here, and this one's way up here. But in order for these three walls to clean up together, their reference lines need to all interact with each other in some way or another. Now, what you might need to juggle on top of that is not just those reference line interactions, but actually in the wall settings, there's this junction order. What order do these three things come together in? I'm just going to go ahead and grab these three walls as an example because I think these are very unlikely to clean up. In fact, they're not even, the building's not orthogonal. I'm going to take that out of the equation right here. Okay, so if these two walls are intersecting with each other, let's go ahead and use that intersect, right? Yeah, this is probably exactly what you're talking about, Todd, is that these things never want to clean up right. And it can be a bit frustrating to try and figure out why these things aren't cleaning up. My first thought would be that this should be at the core, this should be at the core, not at the face of finish of those walls. But it also could be that maybe this wall just needs to intersect with these two walls after the fact. So if we say that the junction order of these two walls with exterior insulation come together first, so they're a higher junction order 9, that can sometimes clean that up. Doesn't look like that's the case this time. So if we take these walls and we say that those are the outside of core, right? Now that's here to here. Now that's going to clean up a little bit better. So, and that's again, because that blue line to blue line to blue line is all coming to a single point. If you can get those to come to a single point, that's the best way to ensure that they're going to clean up. But also ensuring that they have the right junction order. Like if I were to set these two walls junction orders to like 10 or 11 or something, it's going to go back wonky because these two things are trying to join before this one's allowed to come in.
So is it standard to just like when you have these conditions, they're all going to be caused by slightly different things? You just go into each location and start like troubleshooting this? I'm thinking of this because I'm trying to get through this right now, where I had a CAD plan that was done and I traced it. So I needed to use like outside of finish, but I will change it to outside of core later. And so I'm going to end up with like a bunch of little things to fix likely.
Yeah. And you're gonna run into that same situation we just saw here, right? Like, so if you start by modeling it to outside face, right? And then later on decide you want to move it to outside face of core, it's going to shift the position of those walls. So, and that's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just you need to account for that and give yourself the time to know that like that's going to shift and then I have to move it back to that position. It's an extra step along the way. But as far as like trying to troubleshoot why these two things are not coming together cleanly, yeah, you kind of have to go case by case, and like maybe I dumb down the junction order of this one to make this work, but then what's the other end of this? Oh, geez. It's like a 40-foot branch fell off a tree in the backyard. Anyway, what's going on at the other end of this wall? And did dumbing down the junction order of this wall for this connection affect what's going on at the other side? So it can be a bit of like a stacking the deck kind of situation, or you know, house of cards situation where you get around the building and realize you've got a pinch point. There are extreme measures where you can take complex profile walls and get things to come together to a single column, or sorry, complex profile columns, not walls, and get things to come together at a single column. That's a very extreme case. It's a bit of work, you know, every time I have to do a intersection like that. I account for about half an hour of just troubleshooting, drafting, getting a column in there, cleaning up in plan, section, elevation, 3D. It's a bit more work than is worth. Sometimes we have to just look at like, is there an extra line here or there that I don't want to see? We can sometimes clean it up. Sometimes it's not worth that trouble. So you have to sort of take into account like how much am I going to see at 1/4 inch? I hate to like, you know, have sloppy modeling practices. Um, it's as clean as it can get within reason, maybe is sometimes an acceptable way to put it. But for the most part, just getting these reference lines together, getting the junction order right, will get you 99% of the way there. Beyond that, what you can sometimes do is if you select these things and take a look at their building materials. So by having them selected, it's going to list off their building materials here. It's going to highlight them in green. And you can sometimes make minor tweaks to what their building material priorities are. Building material priorities are basically how different elements interact with each other. If, for example, you have a concrete slab intersecting with a wood wall, the wood wall disappears where the slab exists in section because of these building material priorities. And sometimes you have two building material priorities. Wood sheathing is 511, wood structure is 512. If they're exactly the same, sometimes they don't interact in the way that you expect. So if they were both 512, bump one up to 513, see if that fixes the problem. But that's sort of like phase 3 of trying to get these things to clean up. If I get it to this point and I'm still getting like a weird junction here where maybe the foam is running through the sheathing in one point, maybe I need to bump the priority up on the sheathing. But yeah, unfortunately it is a bit of a troubleshooting exercise every time to try and evaluate why these walls aren't cleaning up at various corners.
Okay.
Wow.
Should we take a 5-minute break? Do you want to?
So,
Why needs a 5-minute break?
Yeah. Can we have a potty break? Go.
yeah, I might go heat myself up a cup of tea. So yeah, 5-6 minutes. Let's circle back. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Yeah, I cannot for the life of me get some of these walls on this